Welcome on into the Sko Show, Buff Faithful. It is Nebraska week, and we are going to break down that game for you today right here on the Sko Show. Aniello, Piro, Chase Howell, ready to talk some Colorado Buffaloes football. And Chase, real quick before we get to the Nebraska game, they got out to that 1-0 start. A little sweaty. I know you were in attendance. A lot of things that I want to see the Buffaloes clean up myself. But at least we get to talk about a fresh game, a rivalry game, and a lot to build off for the Buffaloes going into this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really funny because a lot of what we talked about before the season had started was, I think we'll know what this team is in the first half of that North Dakota State game. And if that's what this team is, I don't think that means very good things for this season. But they bounced back a little bit in the second half. They looked a little bit better. And now we're like, we don't really know what this team is. We don't know what this ceiling is. I still don't know what the expectation should be. But I think we're going to find out a lot about this team on Saturday. It doesn't get much tougher on the schedule than going to Nebraska, packed house, 90,000 fans. I know they've been talking about that all week, but this is as big time as it gets, and I can't wait for Saturday night.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, and I'll put my own foot in my mouth a little bit because I was the one who was beating the drum about first half. Like, let me see. I really did like the second half adjustments that Colorado made. I was a little bit like, oh, man, here we go again with the same issues in the first half, but I do think Colorado, the Buffs, did a good job of clamping down. The defense was great in the second half. Shador, Travis Hunter with that catch, right? There's a lot of optimism and a lot of good things that came out of the second half of that game. But to your point, and look, you got to give credit where credit is due. North Dakota State, very quality opponent. This is a different beast, though, to your point, in Lincoln, rivalry game against a team that you chewed up and spit out last year.
Absolutely. And playing a team like North Dakota State probably helped just because of how well coached they are and how disciplined CU had to be, especially in the second half, to be able to stay in that game. They obviously were playing important snaps in the second half, so they've already been under pressure. They already kind of know how this team's going to perform under pressure, whereas a team like Nebraska just cruised to that win over UTEP. So I think it's going to be a really tough test. 7.5-point spread seems like a lot of points. It seems like it's going to be a battle, grind them out type of game, but we're going to see. And all this talk about Dylan Raiola versus Shador Sanders, kind of like taking the experienced quarterback, but I know we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, you know, Coach Prime actually had some good stuff talking about how it's a luxury, the amount of experience that Shador Sanders has, a guy that started every game essentially except one since high school up until now at that quarterback position. So it's going to be exciting. But for any of the Buff faithful out there that are not making the trip to Lincoln for the game this weekend, Chase and myself will be at number 38 in Rhino for a Mile High Sports watch party. We'll have pre and post game shows. We'll have the game sound on. If it's nice out, we're going to be outside. So if you're looking for a place to watch the game with your fellow Buff faithful and community, make sure to come on down to number 38, and we'll also be there over the course of the entire football season for the Colorado Buffaloes. And Chase, we've got a great show lined up for the fans today. We've got our guy Adam Munsterteiger back in the saddle. We'll break it down with him. I think he's the one guy that I trust more than anybody when it comes to Buffalo's news and information and insight. So we've got a great conversation with him. And why don't you tell the folks who our second guest of the afternoon is?
Voted as the #1 CU fan on social media, Brandon McCartney, the grandson of Bill McCartney. He knows a lot about this rivalry. Bill McCartney started this rivalry. He's the reason why we hate Nebraska, why we'd rather be dead than red, and all of the great quotes that Bill McCartney has given us over the years. So I really want to talk to Brandon on Nebraska week because I know how passionate he is about hating that team in red.
Yeah, you know, and I was doing a little bit of research myself, actually, after we talked with BMAC last night about the rivalry that is Colorado and Nebraska and how it started as, you know, a little bit of little brother with CU being like, we need a rival. They're in the state next to us. Nobody wants to live there. So why don't you just come to Boulder? And so it's a fun conversation with BMAC and obviously insightful conversation with Adam Munsterteiger. But let's get some of our opinion out there about this game. And I think for me, I mentioned the second half and how I liked how CU improved specifically on defense. Where's the pass rush? That's what I'm still trying to figure out. And maybe I don't even want to say it was that much better. I just thought the secondary was better in the second half. The linebackers were better in the second half. But we know that the success of the Buffs this season depends upon how much better they are in the trenches. I thought they were much improved on the offensive line. But Chase, no pressure, no bark, or no bite, excuse me. Just not a lot of dogs, as Coach Prime likes to say on that defensive line, at least in my opinion, in week one against NDSU. That has got to change if they want to win this game.
we talked all offseason about the depth that they had, especially at the edge, with bringing in Deion Hayes and Samuel Okinola from Pitt and BJ Green from Arizona State. We didn't really see the electricity from those guys, what I expected to see off of the edge. And I thought the guys on the interior played really well. I thought Chidozie Nwankwo, who we talked about pregame, I thought he had a great game. So I was very impressed with the interior, but off the edge, and it seemed like even in the run game, they weren't solidifying the edge. It seemed like North Dakota State didn't get much up the middle, but when they were running from side to side, they were able to get a few yards. So we got to see a little bit of improvement off the edge. And I know that they have guys, I know they have dudes, but we just haven't seen them show up yet.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those situations where, like, all right, you got your little trial run, right? Like, you had your little soft launch against NDSU, even though that's a quality opponent. Like, there is no way the Buffs can play any way that they did against North Dakota State for 4 quarters and expect to win this game against Nebraska. And I just need to see the energy and the engagement and just the desire. Like, that was the other thing that was a little concerning to me, is the Buffs defense looked a little lethargic in that first half against NDSU. Now, is that first game jitters? Is that, scheming and system, whatever it might be? But I was a little displeased and unsettled with the lack of feistiness that Buffs defense came out with last week.
Where are the dogs, as you said? I thought we'd see a little bit more energy as well. And they can't play like that against Nebraska. I think the biggest thing about Nebraska is being able to stop the run. I think if they make Dylan Raiola throw, I think they could be in a very, very good spot, but you got to be able to stop the run. And I don't know if we saw enough against North Dakota State that they can do that.
And I know this isn't apples to apples necessarily, but I do think it's a worthy talking point. Everyone's like worshiping Dylan Raiola, right? True freshman quarterback doing incredible things against UTEP. But then when we talk about the Buffs offensive line that features a true freshman, it's like, I don't know if they can get away with that. I don't know if they're going to be able to protect Shedeur the right way. And I know that offensive line is a lot different than quarterback, but there's just a lot of moving parts with both of these teams, that there's youth on both sides. There's a blend of experience and high level talent as well. But I think, to your point, Chase, the quarterback situation for Nebraska is going to be very important. Can CU pressure the quarterback? Can they make Dylan Raiola feel like he's a true freshman playing in a big-time college football game? I think if the Buffs can get the pressure on and keep that pressure on throughout the course of the game, they're going to have a chance to win this one. And it's worth noting, Buffs are a pretty significant betting underdog in this one.
He played with a lot of confidence against UTEP. I think that was the most impressive part, is you don't see a true freshman walk into his first big game at his home stadium and play with that much confidence. There was all this buildup about mini Mahomes. I know he loves to be Patrick Mahomes. He's wearing the number 15, but he made a few Mahomes-like throws. And so they're going to have to get him off of his comfort zone. I think he looked really, really comfortable in that first game. And I think Colorado's players on defense are a lot better than UTEP, but they're going to have to find a way to knock him out of his comfort zone.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting one. Let's dive into our conversations with Adam Munsterteiger and Brandon McCartney. We'll get some additional insight for this game between the Colorado Buffaloes and the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Stick with us. Listen to those conversations. Chase and I will come back and give our prediction for this game. Welcome on back into the Sko Show right here on Mile High Sports. Aniello, Piro, Chase, Howell. Hope everybody is doing well out there, getting ready for a big game, a rivalry game between Colorado and Nebraska. And we're going to dive into that here in this segment, but we've got to reintroduce the man himself to the Sko Show. He is Adam Munsterteiger. All of you Buff fans out there know him. He's the publisher of BuffStampede.com. He's been covering the program long before Coach Prime, but he's also locked in and ready to give you all of the necessary information as it pertains to the Coach Prime era. Adam, you were a part of the show last year when we were doing the radio thing. Now we're moving it over to YouTube, which seems to be the it thing these days, but appreciate you hopping on with us and talking some Buffs.
Yeah, definitely. Congrats on season 2 of the Sko Show. For a second there, I didn't know if you guys were bringing it back, and that would have made me sad. So I was very excited when I saw you guys dropped your first episode of season 2 last week. And I always enjoy, I tend to be doing my yard work while listening to you guys a lot of the time. So I associate the Sko Show with mowing the lawn, I guess, now.
Hey, whatever floats your boat. I'm the same way when I listen to my sports betting podcast. It's like when I'm driving or when I'm doing stuff around the house. So that's what we aim to be here on the show, is just kind of your weekly dose of Buffs content, get you ready for what's coming up. And look, I know I was talking about this with Chase a little bit. I know a lot of people love to dive into the theatrics around the program. And I love to eat it up as well. I'm no different than anyone else, but we like to dive into the X's and O's and talk about why the wins matter, why they lost, and all that kind of stuff. And that's why I think it's just incredible to have you on the show with your knowledge. And let's just dive right into it, my friend. Again, Adam Munsterteiger, check out his site, buffstampede.com. Little sweaty against North Dakota State, at least in the first half. I loved the adjustments that the CU defense in particular made in the second half. Colorado escapes with a 31-26 victory. They start out 1-0. Let's start there. What was your overall interpretation of the game? And did the Buffs live up to the hype or the expectations that we've been hearing about throughout the offseason?
Well, I went into that game expecting Colorado to pull away, and they almost did. When they went up 11, they needed a defensive stand to kind of, I think, really make you feel good leaving Folsom Field with that second half performance. But it was a closer margin than I expected. But North Dakota State was also a better football team than I expected. We kept hearing about their history and the fact that they're ranked second in the FCS preseason poll this year, and they've got this savvy quarterback. But it's still, it is a head coach that does have history there, but a first-year head coach. And they had some key injuries in their preseason. The fact that they showed up to Folsom Field and had a great game plan, really utilizing the middle of the field against Colorado's defense, which we saw be an issue at times last year. So, I think I mentioned this after the game on Thursday. If Colorado's defense forces North Dakota State to punt the first 3 possessions of the game and then gives up 4 scores, versus the opposite of what did happen, where they gave up those drives early, but then corrected it, like you said, Aniello. And the fact that they were able to have that third quarter defensively made you feel pretty good, I think, about Rob Livingston in his first ever game as a defensive play caller. And like anybody that's in a new gig, I'm sure there's going to be growing pains with him, but to be able to see those adjustments at halftime, I think was the most encouraging thing. But you also try not to overanalyze it, right? This is one football game. I think North Dakota State looks really good, but we're going to see how they play out the rest of the season as well. So it's always easy to overreact because we finally have something tangible to talk about, yet it is still just one football game.
I think the story of the game on the CU side had to have been Travis Hunter. Just an unbelievable performance, and it's hard to have the right expectations for him because I think he blew my expectations out of the water in that first game. I'm curious, Adam, if you were to describe Travis Hunter to somebody that doesn't know anything about football, doesn't know anything about CU, how would you describe Travis Hunter?
I think fluidity is the word that comes to mind first. Even when Travis Hunter hits the turf, it's like artwork. It is unbelievable just how he has body control, and especially that touchdown that he had late in a season opener. Guys just don't have body control like that, and it's unbelievable to watch him. There was a great quote this past offseason. He went to go work with a cross-country coach that coaches elite cross-country athletes, and he was blown away with Travis Hunter's stamina and kind of joked that you wishes he could cut him open and see how he's designed, because it just really is unbelievable. You hear the words generational talent used sometimes. I think if Travis Hunter stays healthy this season, he's going to do things as a two-way player that we just have never seen in college football. And so that is the concern going forward, obviously, because his first year at Jackson State, that was the issue. He was never healthy. And then obviously last year, the cheap shot there in the CSU game. So as long as he stays healthy, I think this is going to be one of those seasons that people talk about forever in terms of being among the best two-way players ever. And how do you even decide where he's going to get drafted now? He looks so good at receiver in the opener.
I think I saw a dumb mock draft from Field Yates that had him going 11th overall, and I immediately was like, no. Like, if he does what we know he can do, like, he's going to be a top pick in this draft. And I agree with you. Real quick, like, the way – I'm still thinking about that catch, to be honest with you, but, like, the way that I personally knew that football was back in the Buffs and Travis Hunter is immediately after our watch party at number 38. I sprinted home, and the first and only thing I wanted to do was watch SportsCenter. I can't tell you the last time that I was like actively like, I need to watch SportsCenter. Like, I need to see what people are talking about with this guy. And it has just been phenomenal to see, kind of get his feet wet last year and hopefully blossoming into this otherworldly player this season. We know the talent's there, and I'm just stoked for Travis Hunter and the Buffs and that offense. It is so explosive. It's going to be a good season, hopefully. But let's fast forward. It is rivalry week. Tongue twister, excuse me there. As CU will take their talents out to Nebraska. Remember, last year, CU was able to take care of business at home against Nebraska at Folsom Field. That was an epic. I believe that was the 10 a.m. kickoff start as well. Folsom Field was buzzing. But Matt Rule in year 2, that's a major theme that I've been hearing a lot about. They've got a lot of talent. Dylan Raiola as well, the quarterback, mini Mahomes, whatever you want to call him, hostile environment. And I'll come out and say it. I'm a little concerned about the Buffs overall this season because the talent's there, no doubt about it. But a lot of the same issues that I saw last year, to me, were present throughout the course of that game against North Dakota State. So my question to you, we think Nebraska is going to be much improved, but how do you kind of gauge this matchup with a real test on the road for CU?
Yeah, this is going to be a tough matchup, not just because of the environment. And I did a Q&A back and forth with our Nebraska guy, and he says he can't remember the last time, even as passionate as Nebraska fans are every week, he can't remember a time that this many people were this fired up for the game. So it's going to be a really fun environment. I think it's easy as a Colorado fan maybe to get a little cocky now because last year, Jeff Sims was kind of a disaster at quarterback for Nebraska. Even before that, when Colorado went up against Adrian Martinez, he was a turnover machine. And now you get ready for a matchup against a true freshman quarterback that is going to be a really, really good player. Might be a Heisman candidate at some point down the road. That's how talented he is. And he looked good against UTEP, but it was against a really bad UTEP defense. I want to see what this looks like against Colorado's defense. I did think Colorado's defensive line improvement did show in that opener, so that's one area they were better. Yeah, they did have some issues defensively, but we saw that get corrected in the second half. We'll see if that carries over. It's a tough game to predict because I just don't know what to expect from Dylan Raiola in his first game against a power conference opponent. You know that Colorado is going to try to throw some wrinkles in there to try to test that quite a bit. But this kid seems to have a lot of moxie for somebody his age. It's pretty incredible. And I think going forward, Nebraska is going to be, a much more tougher out in the Big Ten. They were not that far out last year. They went 5-7. 5 of their losses were by 7 points or less. 4 of their losses were by just a field goal. So Nebraska fans are a little bit optimistic in the same way that Colorado fans were looking to a lot of the close losses last year and then pointing to improvements through the portal. And so Nebraska, they're tough in the trenches. Their O-line was pretty good last year. They just didn't get very good quarterback play. Defensive line at Nebraska has gotten better. So, yes, you are truly getting tested going out to Lincoln this weekend on both sides of the ball for Colorado.
Let's talk a little bit more about the trenches specifically, because I think there was a lot of different viewpoints, especially I was reading your message board right after the game. Where did you kind of fall? I know you mentioned there was a little bit of improvement, but did you kind of see what you had to see, or are you still kind of expecting to see more, both offensive line and defensive line?
Yeah, I think you need to see it continuing to go forward because if you remember last year, the O-line actually looked adequate very, very early on, and then other teams started to really pick apart Colorado's weaknesses, especially on the interior of the offensive line. And then week after week, that group's confidence seemed to just get more and more shattered, and it became a really bad situation. The floor for this offensive line is clearly much higher than it was last year. And it did look quite a bit better on Thursday night than it did really, I want to say maybe the final 9-10 weeks of last season. So that had to be encouraging. And, frankly, I kind of expected Jordan Seaton to give up a sack because it's his first ever game and he wasn't perfect, but he played even better than I expected. And so there are some things to point to and be encouraged there. I think they're still kind of figuring out the right side of that offensive line a little bit. I'm really surprised Tyler Johnson transferring in from Houston hasn't had more of a play in that competition for a guard spot. So they might still be able to, but they can at least tinker with guys, Chase, this year. Last year, I mean, they just didn't have anybody else to in the too deep to go to. So that's another encouraging sign. But yeah, I think cautious optimism would be what I would call it with the O-line after 1 week.
I think that's fair. I thought they looked from the eye test, and then even looking at the stats, Shedeur was obviously rattled and under pressure a little bit, but it looked a little bit, the continuity looked a little bit better on the line, in my opinion. Real quick, before we get to some keys for the game, what about the defensive line? Because that was an area that I personally was a little, I don't know what the right word is, but I'm looking for some more from that defensive line. I'm looking for more pressures. I'm looking for more, rattling of the quarterback, and they're going to need that this weekend against Nebraska. What was your evaluation of Coach Prime's defensive line here week 1 against NDSU?
Yeah, you're going to see Colorado's pass rush be quite a bit improved from last year, but that was a tough matchup from that standpoint. They were getting the ball out really quick, and I don't think it was until that final drive that North Dakota State even attempted to pass more than 15 yards downfield. So it's tough to really rattle the quarterback when they're getting the ball out that quick. I think when they get into some more traditional matchups going forward, that group will get better. They played 24 defensive players, more than 6 snaps in that football game. So I think that is something, and if you can continue to have really deep rotations as the season goes along, it's really going to breed positive results. So I thought the depth showed. Chidozie Nwankwo had a really nice game, the Houston transfer on the defensive line. So there were some positives there. There were definitely some gaffes there, and especially that late touchdown run by Cam Miller. That's stuff that you can't have going forward as the schedule gets tougher.
All right, let's talk about some keys to beating Nebraska. I think it starts right there with the defensive line. I think you got to be able to stop the run, and you got to force Dylan Raiola to throw and see if he can handle all the pressure. But what are some of your keys against Nebraska on Saturday?
Yeah, he's a phenom, but he's 19 years old, and this is the first time he's going to go against a power conference defense, and so that is the key. And I don't expect Dylan Raiola to have the massive turnover issues that we saw with some previous Nebraska quarterbacks. But I still think that you can have him make some mistakes, whereas on the other side of the field, Shedeur Sanders rarely does. Sometimes he holds on to the ball too long, but in terms of his decision-making when he does throw the football, he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. Obviously, last week's interception with Shedeur was a big-time fluke. Yeah, I think if Dylan Raiola comes out and plays a fantastic football game, this is going to be a really tough environment to pull off the upset. But I think he will make some mistakes enough that we saw the offensive firepower with Colorado now. Does Nebraska focus on Jimmy Horn Jr. and Travis Hunter? And is this the week LeJontay Wester and Will Shepherd show up? It's going to be week to week. It's going to be fun to see which Colorado receivers emerge. And so I think Colorado is going to be able to, as long as they can just adequately protect Shedeur, put up enough points, and they really just need the defense to be adequate. So I think it is how that 19-year-old looks in Saturday's game that's going to really determine who wins this football game.
Well, we shall see. I know I'm excited. I know you're excited. Chase is excited. And for any of the Buff faithful out there that are looking to watch the game, we'll be at number 38 in Rhino for a watch party. So come on down, pre- and post-game shows with myself and Chase Howell, and a nice little gathering spot for any of the Buff faithful out here in the Denver metro area. But he is the great Adam Munsterteiger, publisher of BuffStampede.com. Be sure to check out his site, check out all of his work, and he'll have you covered with Buffs content all season long. And he might be appearing on this show throughout the course of the season as well. So, Adam, my friend, thank you so much for a few minutes of your time. It's going to be an exciting one. And next week, we got CSU. So we're right in the thick of it, my friend. Thank you.
Always enjoy it. Thanks, guys.
All right. Welcome on back into the Sko Show. Aniello, Piro, Chase Howell. And we are joined by a very special guest. We talked to Adam Munsterteiger on the program today, but now we've got the number one top dog when it comes to CU fandom, Mr. Brandon McCartney, kind enough to give us a few minutes of his time. And you're legendary for your pregame videos. You're legendary for your overall fanaticism of being a Colorado Buffalo supporter. And I would imagine that, the Rocky Mountain Showdown is always a fun one to get amped up for. We could do that next week. But CU Nebraska, a college football rivalry that has been decades in the making, decades long, and I'm so happy to have you on the show today, my man. How are you feeling today, and how are you feeling about this game? Bring the thunder, buddy.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, first of all.
Come on, B-Mac.
And,
You're wired, fired, and inspired. That's
you want me
all.
to give you one?
Let's go.
We need it right away.
All right. I am wired, fired, and inspired.
Woo!
Let's go, Buffalo!
There it is. All right, now we can do this.
I'd rather be dead than red.
There it is. We're off to a great start.
All right, BMAC. I need the energy. I need the aura. This is week 2, right? I thought NDSU was a little sweaty. I thought they clamped down nice in the second half. I liked the improvements. I hate to admit it, Nebraska's better than they were last year, in particular at the quarterback position. So my question to you, how to see you win this football game? Give it to me, man.
Well, what I saw, we weren't setting the edge against North Dakota State, and we were giving up big plays on second and third down. And I think if we can contain Dylan Raiola in the pocket and just keep him under pressure and not give up those big second down plays, those big third down plays. Containing the running game and minimalizing the running game and really most importantly more we need to see a more disciplined team because all those penalties we saw are not going to cut it against Nebraska. Giving up those big plays are not going to cut it. Dropping passes when you're wide open is not going to cut it. Basically, we have to on offense we have to pass to more than Travis and Jimmy Horn. We have to throw to Amarion Miller, Draylon Miller. We have to utilize our offensive running backs this time. Like I think we only had like 67 yards of running the other game against NDSU. We have to utilize all facets of our game to really beat Nebraska this weekend, and not just use Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn. If you know what I'm saying.
Hey, man, I don't mind watching as much Travis Hunter as I possibly can, but you're absolutely right. You've got to spread the sugar. We saw Amarion Miller. Was it the Nebraska game last year? He may have popped off. There was a game early in the year.
USC game.
Yeah, so there's no question about the talent. I need to see that continuity, but all in all, I am stoked for this game coming up this weekend against Nebraska. Of course, the Colorado Buffaloes. Chase, do you have any closing thoughts for Mr. BMAC before we get out of here?
I'm wired, fired, and inspired.
Let's go.
Let's go, Buffalo!
I am ready to go. Brandon McCartney, the man. Yeah, hey, let's get him up. Let's get him up. Let's go, baby.
Even though I don't have that bling like Shador does.
We'll get that on you, though. We'll need to do a shipment.
Yeah, we got to get you iced out.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get a little deal.
I need that hat, Chase. I need that hat.
Mm-hmm.
Easy enough. All right, B-Mac, appreciate you big time. You're more than welcome to join the show whenever to talk about the Colorado Buffaloes, and we'll do it again. We'll do it again soon, my friend. Thank you so much. All right, fantastic conversation with Adam Munsterteiger and Brandon McCartney getting ready for this big-time game between Colorado and Nebraska.
Wired, fired, and inspired.
Yes, sir. And so let's talk about this game, man, because Colorado's, 7.5, 8.5 point underdog in this one?
7.5, I believe.
So,
yes.
You're basically you're going to get a touchdown. One score type game is how the sports books are projecting this one to play out. And one thing that you and I have talked about, Chase, is the one way, regardless of covering the number, but even just having a chance to win this game, defense aside, right? We know that the defense has their question marks up front and whatnot. CU's offense is so explosive that even if this Colorado Buffaloes defense struggles or Dylan Raiola just lights up the world, I believe Colorado, with all the weapons that they have at wide receiver, they do need to improve in the running game as well. But I think Colorado is set up to keep pace in a marathon type of game with Nebraska should it be a shootout.
I think that's really what should make you feel confident about them being able to cover the number is if they get down 14, even 21 points, I think there should still be some belief that Shedeur can get them back into that game. They did it quite a few times last year as well, in some games that they got down early and then were able to get back and just really didn't have enough time to be able to pull off the comeback. So if you're looking at them covering the 7.5, you should be able to put your trust in Shedeur. We know that this team is probably not going to run the football that well. Running looked a little bit better against North Dakota State, but I wouldn't say it looked that much better than it did last season. And they're going to have to run the football, especially early, in order to kind of throw Nebraska off their balance. But yeah, I think you have to have trust in Shedeur in this game. And he is the best player, best quarterback in college football. You watch Mel Kiper and all these other NFL draft experts talking about him this past week. It's very clear that he is everything that people have said he is, despite the haters and what people try to say.
I agree. And I know that this is college football and not the NFL, but the one thing I will say is, how many times do you want to continue to put like the fate of the game in Shedeur Sanders' hands? Like, you're obviously somewhat comfortable there, but the point that I'm trying to make is you need a more balanced attack on offense. Like, you can't just say a prayer and throw it up to Travis Hunter all the time. Like, it's been fun. It's exciting. You love to see it when it happens and it works out, but the lack of a run game against NDSU, and I know that's a quality opponent, right? Big blue collar program up front as well. CU has got to figure out a way to run the ball or just establish the run, because that's going to open up plenty of opportunities for Shedeur and company.
It would be nice. I don't know if I'm feeling very optimistic about their ability to run the football, especially Charlie Offerdahl didn't look that great. Dallin Hayden got a few carries. A couple of them looked good, but I don't know if they have quite the dudes at running back, and I don't know if they have the run blocking to be able to get that done, especially against a really formidable defensive line in Nebraska. So that would be my biggest worry. Obviously, I'm very comfortable about the weapons that they have on offense, and I think we're going to see a little bit more Will Shepherd and LaJohntay Wester, as this defense probably wants to put their focus on Travis Hunter and obviously Jimmy Horn. So I'm hoping to see the offensive weapons that people don't know about as much really come out in this game. But to be able to run the football, I think, is going to be a really, really tough task against this Nebraska team.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. And thankfully, they've got that explosiveness from the quarterback, the wide receivers, and whatnot. So I do think CU will be able to keep pace in this game, whichever way it goes. But all right, before we get out of here, 30 seconds, Chase Howell. Us winning this game and why?
I think they're winning. Yeah. After all that, I think they're winning. I just think there's so much buildup into this game. I'll take the team that has had experience playing these types of games. I know Nebraska, they play tough games on their Big Ten schedule. I don't remember the last time that they've won a big game like this, and they're throwing a true freshman quarterback out there that has never been in this sort of environment. Shedeur Sanders has been in this sort of environment. Maybe not 90,000 on the road. I know maybe Oregon was the closest similarity to what this crowd is going to be on Saturday night, but I'll put my trust in that sort of experience, that type of quarterback, the elite playmakers they have at wide receiver. Nebraska has a lot of talent. Most of me sort of feels like Nebraska is going to find a way to lose this game rather than Colorado finding a way to win this game.
Well, I like the sound of that. What did Coach Prime say? I'm not new to this. I'm true to this. I think that's one of his famous lines from when he was first hired as Colorado Buffalo's head coach. And, he's been through the wire when it comes to these types of situations. You mentioned Shedeur, Travis. A lot of these guys are battle tested. It is going to be an exciting game between Colorado and Nebraska this Saturday evening. And once again, for any of you folks that are in the Denver metro area that are looking for a place to watch the game, be sure to come on down to number 38 in Rhino. We're going to have a Mile High Sports watch party. We'll have a pregame show, a postgame show, and tons of fun throughout the course of the game as well. So make sure to come on down to number 38, and we'll see if the Buffs can get this game done. But for Chase Howell, be sure to follow him on social at Chase Howell _. I'm Aniello Piro. You can get me at Media by AP. That is going to do it for us on this week's installment of the Sko Show Nebraska Week. We'll be back at it again next week with a preview of the Rocky Mountain Showdown. Sko Buffs.
Let's go Buffs.